Today's session will focus on issues pertaining to confidentiality. So, when you talk about confidentiality, what are we talking about? I think this is one of the most important things that is also important in every organization, be it even in a family setup. As a family, you might have some other things that you cannot be able to communicate to other people. For example, a husband and a wife, you might have some other issues that maybe you might not have to communicate to the children. You might have other things that also maybe you don't have to communicate to your parents, workmates, and other people. You know these things are solely for me and my husband. Yeah, of course, sometimes it happens also you might have personal things that you don't have to share with anyone. Yeah, we all know that by nature, every human being is unique in his own uniqueness, but also at the same time, we are all different. That's why even husband and the wife can be able to sue each other. Yeah, so as you as a person, you are also a legal entity on its own. You have the right to sue, but also you can be sued. So sometimes, whether you are a family, but sometimes you might find that you cannot save jail for your husband, for example. You cannot save jail for your wife, for example. So that means we are one, but at the same time, each and every person is responsible for his own life. That's what we need to appreciate. So this also happens, let's say, in the organizations. To say organizations also as legal entities, they might also have some information which maybe might not have to be shared with anyone or anyhow. So this is where we're talking about now issues pertaining to confidentiality. So as a family, you might have confidentiality. As a person, you might have confidentiality that maybe you don't have to share with other people, for example. And also as an organization, there are certain people that you need not to share the information with. So within the organization, could be the same organization, everyone is working within the organization. There's certain information which is privileged to the board members, for example, the council members, for example. But also there are certain issues which maybe they're also confidential to management, for example, which are is privileged information which can only be accessed by management. There's certain kind of information which can be accessed by each and every staff member within the organization. So that's what we need to appreciate when we talk about issues of confidentiality. Who has to have access to which information, when, why? So that's what is important within the organization, to appreciate, to say the ladders, the levels of information sharing. Who should have access to which information and what kind of information? When can such people have such kind of access to that kind of information, and how should they have access to that kind of information, or in what amount that information? So sometimes you can share to say, no, as the organization we have got this salary structure, but you cannot be able to share the nitty-gritties of we have got no chairs and all that, but you don't have to share maybe certain information to everyone within the organization. That's what is very, very important. So when we talk about confidentiality, for example, we're talking about issues, information which who has to have access to that information. Well, when something is confidential, it doesn't mean to say nobody within the organization can have access to there, but you should be able to categorize this information. Has to be accessed by each and every member within the organization. This information has to be accessed by this kind of people within the organization. This information is only privileged to this kind of staff members within this department who have to access to this kind of information. So I'll give an example. Maybe in human resource management, you might have information like the people that have been shortlisted for a job, for example. Yeah. So the people who are involved in the shortlisting, how confidential are they when it comes to keeping such kind of information, so that other people might not have to know who was shortlisted. These shortlisted people could be internal people or external people, but how confidential are they when it comes to processing of that shortlisting process? That's what is key, is very important within the organization. So you should be able to declare, to say, okay, before someone maybe has been involved in the process of the shortlisting, should be briefed on the need for him or her to declare to say you have a sense of what? Confidentiality, or you might need to do some kind of what we call oath of secrecy. There are certain organizations, by virtue of you joining that organization, you sign oath of secrecy. Why? People have not to know. Other people who are not privy to the information, when you come across the information, if it transpires that you have divulged the information to the general public, people should be able to look at that and be able to punish you, for example. Yeah. Nowadays, you find a lot of information, could be salary structures of organizations, could be confidential reports, interview reports, disciplinary reports, many other financial accounts, and or many other information of organizations people are sharing on social media, for example, on WhatsApp, on Twitter, or whatever. So, but the point is, what I tend to say is, who leaks that information? Are we sure that that information was supposed to be shared to the general public or within the organization? Memos, circulars, letters, they are always in the general public. So it means there's lack of what? Confidentiality. But the people, are they aware of the need for them to be confidential? If they are aware, how many times do you remind? Do they know the consequences of sharing that kind of information, for example? What are the consequences? Do you have the mechanisms of dealing with such kind of people, for example, if they have shared the information without approval? So we talk about like the shortlisting, for example, the interviews, for example. When you are we're going for an interview, for example, you review the questions to candidates, for example. Is that right? So you might find that to say within the interview process, once you are involved as a panelist, for example, of an interview, you have some privilege, some information, the questions to the interview, how there was interview, and now how confidential are you when it regards to the information? Who is supposed to share the information? Let's say who was successful, for example. You might always think to say whenever you have done interviews, there might be some levels of decision making. Could be someone has to approve, but maybe you are a panelist, and after the interviews, you have concluded that Mr. So has passed the interview, and you are sharing that information to that particular person to say, no, you can start celebrating you have passed the interview. And you might find just after 2 weeks that it's not him who was what? Successful, for example. Or maybe there's another process that has to be taken over again. Yeah? Like a review and maybe the advertisement of the position and all that. And now you have already communicated. Or maybe they are being asked to do a second round of interview, for example. And yet you have already communicated to that particular person. So these are some of the things that we need to be able to appreciate, to say, do you have the rights for you to share such kind of information, for example? And when you have shared that information, what are the consequences? What do you know the consequences of sharing such kind of information? Sales, for example. How much sales do you make in a day? It could be a company in the private sector. How much sales do you know? How many patients do you handle in a day, for example? What kind of diseases that people are suffering from, for example? Within the organization, maybe sharing of privileged information like HIV status of someone, for example. It could be in the medical space. At the hospital, for example, you're a clinical officer, a medical doctor, you are a nurse, you know the status of someone, HIV status of someone, and now you're sharing that kind of information to people. Something that you had known it in confidence, and now you're sharing to the general public. That's the lack of confidentiality. They shared you in confidence, but now you have removed that confidence, and now we are saying there's the lack of what? Confidentiality. COVID, no, he died of COVID. Some of these things are this information not privileged to some people. Increments, who has received increments, how much has been received, issues pertaining to salary, for example. You are able to share the salary structure of an organization anyhow. You are able to tell everyone how much each and every person within the organization earns. Maybe you are in finance and you are privileged to some kind of information, and other people don't know how much each person within the organization earns, and now you are sharing such kind of information to such kind of people. So that's the lack of confidentiality we're talking about. Who is privileged to share such kind of information, and why such kind of information should be shared? You are sharing important information of people which was supposed to be confidential, maybe the marital status of someone. Someone is asking you whether that person is married or not. Yeah, it could be, it's a private thing. You can be able to reach out to that person. Someone is asking for this kind of information. Should I be able to provide? Go on. I don't mind. No, he divorced, this happened, and you're now restating all the whole story. Age, for example, of employees and all that, the number of children that they have, yeah, that they are sick, they have HIVs and all that. So such kind of information, do you have the rights for you to share such kind of information, which you have known in confidence, and now you are moving the whole confidentiality and you're sharing to other people. So we should be able to look at that to say, do you have the right to share such kind of information? And what should happen now? When I think the best thing is to do is to discipline such kind of employees within the organization. Financial position, for example. The organization, you hold the accounts or you are the salesperson, and now business is going down, and now you are sharing such kind of information to the general public. I don't think that can be tolerated by any company. Trade secrets, yeah, there are some formulas which company use to do their products and all that. Now you are sharing such kind of information with anyone. So those are some of the things that we need to be able to appreciate, to say, do you have the right, for example, to share such kind of information? Internal matters, through memos, letters, it could be circulars within the organization. You find that you are sharing such kind of information to people who are not privileged to have that kind of information. Because there is different information that we categorize in different forms. Others in terms of who should have the information, when and why. And there is responsible offices which have to share that kind of information. It could be the public relations officer, could be the CEO of the company, who are privileged to share that kind of information. The strengths and the weaknesses of the organization, the opportunities and the threats, you're sharing that kind of information to your competitors, for example. The strategies that you use for you to be afloat in the market. So these are some of the things that we should be able to be mindful when you are sharing information, whether what you are sharing is not a privileged information for the organization. We are not saying you won't share anything, but there's certain information which is privileged information, which you got because of by virtue of working in that particular organization. So that's what we were talking about, confidentiality. You should be able to have confidentiality when it comes to issues pertaining to the organization, and be able to share information which you feel can be shared, and you will not be questioned that you have shared privileged information of the organization. Thank you so much.